watching your wallet play.
Whoa.
How about that?
Come by the Plaza Hotel. I got work for you. As for Frank White. You running games here? I want to play.
You stupid son of a bitch.
Nah, I want to play with Arnie.
You got some balls coming here.
Got the card. Get out. From here on, nothing goes down unless I'm involved. No blackjack, no dope deals, no nothing. A nickel bag gets sold in the park. I want in.
You think you're gonna live long enough to spend that money, you fucking hump?
If any of you are tired of getting ripped off by guys like that, you come with me. I'm at the Plaza Hotel. You're all welcome! The joint!
On a sunny afternoon, Frank was released from prison after serving 14 years. Once a formidable mafia boss commanding various illegal enterprises in New York City, he stepped back into a world where his influence had significantly waned. The Colombian and Chinese drug cartels had usurped control of the trade and prostitution operations, effectively sidelining Frank's former associates. Meanwhile, Emilio, a leader in the Colombian prostitution sector, exited his establishment to use a payphone. Without warning, he was ambushed and fatally shot. The assailants displayed Emilio's lifeless body alongside a newspaper article announcing Frank's release. Concurrently, in a hotel room, a man named Jimmy was negotiating a drug deal with King Tito, a prominent Colombian drug lord. Jimmy's incessant chatter irritated King Tito, who unexpectedly raised the price by 10%, catching Jimmy off guard. With no alternatives, Jimmy reluctantly handed over a suitcase to cover the cost of the drugs. However, upon opening the suitcase, it contained nothing but tampons. In an instant, Jimmy retaliated by shooting King Tito and his crew, taking them by surprise. After eliminating the Colombians, Jimmy and his gang regrouped with Frank in another hotel room, revealing that they were responsible for Emilio's assassination under Frank's orders. Welcoming Frank back into the fold, Jimmy reported that both Emilio and King Tito had been dealt with as instructed, and their assets had been seized. He also mentioned an upcoming meeting with a middleman named Decisive. Eager for further details, Frank prepared to head to an upscale meeting venue, where he was greeted by his lawyers, several politicians, and a district judge. He then confronted Decisive to request assistance in arranging a meeting with drug cartel leader Clay. Feigning interest in revitalizing his business operations, Frank took a counselor named Jennifer for a walk in the subway after Decisive departed. Meanwhile, Decisive arrived at a gambling establishment to meet Clay, who was enjoying time with his friends. Decisive conveyed Frank's message to Clay, however, Clay declined the proposal for a meeting. He ridiculed Frank for aligning himself with rival drug lords, expressing a clear preference for conducting business exclusively with Colombians. Clay then dismissed Decisive, instructing him to communicate the rejection. The narrative shifts to a bustling subway car, where Frank and Jennifer were enjoying their time together. Suddenly, three individuals approached them, attempting to provoke Frank. Yet, upon noticing the firearm concealed beneath Frank's jacket, they were overcome with fear. Rather than resorting to violence, Frank chose to display compassion by offering them a stack of cash and inviting them to meet him in a hotel room. Following this encounter, Frank and his associates, informed by Decisive, promptly proceeded to meet Clay. Frank asserted that all future business operations must involve him. However, Clay firmly refused to engage, prompting Frank to take decisive action and fatally shoot him. After eliminating Clay, Frank rallied his former associates to join him. Subsequently, he visited the mayor to inquire about the delayed funding for a hospital in the Bronx. The mayor contended that no budget had been allocated for the hospital and challenged Frank to independently raise $16 million. In an unexpected turn, Frank accepted the challenge, despite his lawyer's counsel to abandon the issue. While enjoying a drink, three detectives, Tommy, Roy, and Dennis, suddenly detained him. The lawyer attempted to intervene, but the detectives disregarded him and escorted Frank against traffic to avoid leaving any traces. They arrived at an isolated alley where they presented Frank with an injured and unconscious man named Enrico. Frank claimed ignorance regarding the situation. This response incited the detectives' anger. However, lacking evidence, they were unable to arrest Frank. Enrico was revealed to be a boss within the Colombian drug cartel, and the detectives suspected Frank's involvement in the deaths of the previous 3 kingpins, which occurred shortly after his release from prison. Meanwhile, Delicio met with Wong, a triad leader from China, in a movie theater to relay a business message from Frank. Wong insisted on receiving cash payment for an item weighing 220 pounds, fully aware that Frank lacked sufficient funds to cover the expense. In response, Delicio suggested arranging a face-to-face meeting between Wong and Frank to negotiate a mutually beneficial agreement. The following day, Jimmy made a stop at a fast food restaurant, where he generously donated money to an elderly woman and her grandchildren. Unexpectedly, detectives and police officers appeared, attempting to ambush him. Surrounded and unable to escape, Jimmy was arrested on charges of murdering several Colombians, with Enrico's testimony serving as evidence against him. Meanwhile, Frank visited a struggling hospital in the Bronx that was in urgent need of government funding. He reiterated his proposal to Wong, but they were unable to agree on the price for Wong's items. Frank proposed a partnership in which they would jointly sell the items and share the profits to benefit the hospital. However, Wong remained adamant about receiving cash for everything. Back at the hotel, Frank learned of Jimmy's arrest and, driven by determination, instructed his crew to expedite Jimmy's release. Later that night, Jennifer and the crew were dispatched to liberate Jimmy from custody. When the 3 detectives arrived at the scene and witnessed Jimmy being released, they were furious. Jennifer warned them that if they did not comply, the matter would escalate to court. Subsequently, in Chinatown, Frank and his associates quickly identified the Chinese gangs and ruthlessly eliminated all triad members. Following the massacre, they apprehended Wong, compelling him to disclose all his possessions. Tragically for Wong, even after surrendering everything, he met a swift demise. A few days later, thanks to Frank's generous donation, the Bronx hospital opened its doors to the public. This development enraged Dennis, who believed that Frank had ascended to become the king of New York while they remained trapped in unfulfilling jobs. He argued that the law favored Frank, who possessed significant financial resources, making it nearly impossible to apprehend him through conventional means. To address this issue, Dennis proposed that a group of detectives confront Frank, creating a competitive dynamic among gangs. However, Roy disagreed with Dennis's plan, but Dennis disregarded his objections. One evening at a vibrant nightclub, Frank's crew was engaged in festivities while Frank himself was occupied with a phone call. Shortly thereafter, Delicio arrived accompanied by a drug cartel leader from Los Angeles, who was aware that Frank had a 200-pound item from Wong and expressed interest in purchasing it. However, the cartel leader was unable to pay the full amount upfront and proposed to pay half initially, with the remainder to be settled after the sale in Los Angeles. Frank, however, insisted on completing the transaction immediately. In response, the cartel leader requested time to inspect the item first. Unexpectedly, upon stepping outside, he fatally shot one of the guards, revealing Delicio's complicity in the scheme. Chaos ensued as armed men stormed the scene. During the ensuing shootout, Frank successfully assisted Jimmy in escaping, but one assailant managed to cling to their car door. When Jimmy attempted to subdue the attacker, they discovered he was an undercover officer. Without hesitation, Frank struck him violently with a fire extinguisher. Witnessing their partner's demise, the remaining assailants pursued them. It became clear that the attackers were Tommy and Dennis. A high-speed chase ensued, marked by intense gunfire. After an extended pursuit, Frank ultimately evaded Tommy and Dennis, successfully losing them. As Tommy and Dennis searched for them, Frank unexpectedly collided his vehicle with theirs, resulting in a violent crash. Seizing the moment, Jimmy opened fire before making his escape. Observing this, Tommy quickly exited his vehicle to pursue Jimmy, while Dennis was unable to locate Frank in the wrecked car. Under a bridge, a sudden gunshot rang out, striking Tommy. Jimmy did not relent and continued to fire multiple rounds into Tommy, leaving him gravely injured. However, in an unforeseen twist, Dennis arrived and shot Jimmy multiple times, resulting in Jimmy's death. After neutralizing Jimmy, Dennis rushed to assist Tommy, but tragically, his efforts were futile. Tommy could not be saved. Overwhelmed with grief and guilt for his fallen comrades, Dennis found it unbearable to remain at the funeral. He chose to step away from the procession and entered his car. However, as soon as he settled inside, another vehicle approached. To his astonishment, Frank rolled down the window and swiftly ended Dennis' life before calmly driving away. Upon returning to headquarters, Frank confronted Delicio, who had been apprehended by his men. During the interrogation, D'Alessio revealed that Enrico had been collaborating with the police to orchestrate Frank's downfall. He confessed to receiving a payment of $50 million and being promised freedom in exchange for disclosing the location of Frank's headquarters. In response to this betrayal, Frank ordered his men to bury the traitor along with the illicit funds. Later that night, Roy returned home to find Frank waiting for him. Frank admitted to having killed Clay, who had accumulated $13 million through gambling schemes, along with Wong, a Chinatown businessman involved in human trafficking, and King Tito, the mastermind behind child prostitution in New York City. Frank justified his actions by asserting that he only eliminated individuals who warranted such fates, regardless of their own lawlessness. He also issued a threat to hire an assassin to target anyone connected to his case. Before leaving, Frank instructed Roy to handcuff himself to a chair. However, once Frank departed, Roy managed to break free and pursued him. Inside a subway car, Frank used a fellow passenger as a shield. Roy urged him to surrender, but Frank coldly took his life. He then exited the station calmly and hailed a taxi. It was later revealed that Frank had sustained a serious gunshot wound from Roy during the encounter. Meanwhile, the police were notified of the shooting and quickly arrived at the scene. The taxi driver, having witnessed Frank brandishing a firearm, exited the vehicle and alerted law enforcement. The police began to surround the taxi, effectively placing Frank under siege. Ultimately weakened by his injuries, Frank succumbed to his wounds and bled to death. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.